On today's episode, I'm going to dive into a little more of my perspective around parenting a medically complex child and this topic of living a cleaner lifestyle. And I know that this is one of the most overwhelming topics probably in the wellness space right now, this idea of non-toxic living, cleaner lifestyle. How do I essentially make healthier choices? Because there is so much information. There's a lot of misinformation. There are a lot of brands that claim to be clean that actually aren't. There are so many pieces to the puzzle that we're trying to make sense of, and we just don't really know how to do the learning, where to do the learning, and where to start. And so, just to give you a quick background, I am a mom of a medically complex child, and I talked a lot about this specifically in my interview last week with Michelle Shawaidi, who's a friend of mine. We met through the business mentorship that we're in, and she also has a medically complex child. And it has been so fun to get to know her and talk to her and share our experiences and be real and honest about what it really feels like to be a mom of a medically complex kid. And with a medically complex kid, a kid who is also neurodiverse, who also has a variety of different things in his specific life that he's managing and working through, my role as a mom and as his parent has been to really understand the different levels of inside out health and wellness. And this is something that I talk about all the time on the podcast here for my own health, for my clients' health, for the moms and women I work with. I talk about inside health all the time. I talk about nurturing all the aspects of the health puzzle. I talk about how important it is to look at wellness as a whole in this holistic viewpoint. And that's really what I've started to do specifically with my kids. And over the past 4 to 5 years, one of the things I've been really diving into is this idea of what do we need to do to support my family well when it comes to products, when it comes to food, when it comes to our environment, and specifically my son. What do we need to continue to uncover about his unique genetic disorder that could potentially be driven into more complicated symptoms, more complicated behaviors by things like brain and body inflammation, the food he eats, the products he uses, and what our environment really looks like. And so for me, I have been diving deep into things that I can actually trust, and that's taken time. That's taken research. That's taken connecting to experts. That's taken a lot of unlearning. That's taken continually getting educated about where I can start to be better. And it is never ending. It is never ending. And it's been this wild journey of trying to figure everything out. And so I'm in this situation right now with my kids where we have a medically complex kid where we have to be super mindful of body and brain inflammation specifically for him. And then I also have a daughter who just turned 13. So she's getting into her teenage years, hormone shifts, puberty, all of those things. And I also have two other kids, another son and another daughter. And so this is something as a big family and as a mom who's passionate about health that I want to continue to get educated about. And I want to continue to do the learning alongside other women and other moms who really want to continue to figure out how do we make this work in the society that we live in. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about today about a topic that is becoming increasingly more of a discussion, which is great, but it also feels very confusing because you may not necessarily know exactly what to do or exactly what to look for. And that is this topic of endocrine disruption. First of all, what are endocrine disruptors? They are essentially chemicals inside of our products that can mimic hormones in our bodies. And that can wreak havoc on our health. It can create all kinds of symptoms. It can really be a big problem in our environment. And it's something that's incredibly important to get educated about from an inside out health and wellness standpoint. And so I know for a lot of moms, we don't know what endocrine disruptors are. Where are they even found? What do we look for? What chemicals and substances do we need to be paying attention to? What are the common places where we can get exposed? What do we need to be swapping out in our homes? And how can these substances essentially interfere with our hormones and affect our health and our development? Like, that's a huge question I've had. And I know that's likely something you've had. If you're a mom who's also trying to figure out, how do I really continue to clean up my lifestyle and our environment in our home? And you're learning slowly about words like endocrine disruptors, but you don't really know where to start, how to start, what to look for, how to even make sense of all of the information. Me too, friend. Me too. And it's taken me a lot of time to figure out, how do I continue to get targeted in my effort, and how can I continue to learn more for our kids and for my family. The other big thing that I've been trying to learn more about related to endocrine disruptors is how is it going to essentially affect my family's health? How can it potentially affect growth? How can it affect development? How can it affect behavior? That's been a huge one for us. Our son is neurodiverse. He also has a medically complex genetic disorder. And with that, there are behaviors, there are mental health hurdles. And like I've shared before here, there is a lot related to brain and body inflammation in our environment that plays a role in how he's able to show up in his everyday life. I've learned that firsthand as an adult. When I'm not fueling my body well, when I'm using products that are riddled with toxins, when I'm not sleeping, when I'm not, paying attention to all these aspects of wellness, and I'm not trying to I'm not focused on cleaning up my lifestyle and really focusing in on habits and products and all the things that are really going to help me function well, I also don't have great behavior. I also don't feel like my mood is stabilized. I also feel inflamed in my body. And that is something that I've learned firsthand. And the more I learn it, the more I'm realizing it's absolutely the same for our kids. And I don't know where we've gone wrong, but there has been these moments in our health journeys. And I know for me too, where I haven't always connected the dots on if I'm feeling this way based on what's happening with my habits or my environment or my products, it's going to be the same for my kids if they're consuming the same things or doing the same things. So it really is important to kind of continue to bridge that gap and look at the parallels and understand like things like endocrine disruption in our environment can absolutely affect development, growth, behavior, all of those things. Endocrine disruptions are also known for disrupting our hormones. Like I said, they are chemicals that literally mimic hormones in our bodies. So it can cause hormonal imbalance. It can cause down the road potential fertility issues. It can cause thyroid problems. There can be, issues related to obesity, diabetes. So many other things can play a role in symptoms or chronic illness or things that we may manage based on our environment and based on the products and the foods and the things that we're utilizing. So I know that's a big one for me. That's been a big question. How could endocrine disruption actually affect my family health? What do I need to get educated about related to that? And especially for my daughters, what do I need to get educated on related to that for hormone health and what their life is going to look like based on the environment that they are in, based on the products that they're using, based on the food that they're eating, all of those things. The third question is, what steps can I take to reduce exposure? What are the actionable, practical things that I can do? What's the advice that I can take? What are the safer alternatives I can look at? How can I limit our exposure when I'm making food choices? Or what do I need to be avoiding? How can I continue to get educated and make small changes over time? And I'm kind of just brainstorming through some of the things that I've thought about in my own brain as far as different questions that have come up. And I essentially want to make sure that you are aware of an amazing community that we are building as a team that you can be a part of. It's just a free community where we are doing this learning together. And so if you have questions like this related to what are endocrine disruptors, or what are endocrine disruptors, and how do I actually get educated about it? Where are they found? How do I start to clean up my environment? How can these things actually affect my family's health? What steps do I need to do to start to minimize them and reduce exposure? Like if you can relate to these questions, and if you're sitting there and thinking to yourself, I need a place to do this learning. I need a place to get educated. I need a place for simple recommendations. I need a place to understand where I can like brands and information I can trust. I want to learn more about what all of this means for my Inside Out Wellness. I'd love for you to join us inside our free community. Again, the coaches that I work alongside in one of my brand partnerships, we're creating a free learning community where we're going to do this deep dive together. We'll be sharing, all kinds of simple recommendations. We'll be sharing our best tips and tricks. We'll be sharing our favorite products. We'll be sharing promotional sales like Black Friday coming up. We'll be talking about ways to get involved with making small, simple change over time. And this is one of those things that we don't always think about when it comes to our wellness. For me, I'm a women's health coach, and oftentimes I'm talking about what does your fitness look like? What does your movement look like? What does your nutrition look like? How's your stress management? How's your sleep? How can we continue to nurture those foundations of wellness? But the other big component to this is endocrine disruption, our environment, our lifestyle, and the chemicals that we are potentially exposed to. And that's just the reality of the society we live in. There is so much out of our control, and there's a lot that is not regulated specifically in our food system, but also in our product and our home care and our skincare systems that has allowed us to be exposed to all kinds of things that really have started to wreak incredibly bad things on our bodies and in our systems. And for me, as a mom of two girls, 4 kids, but a mom of two girls, I want to continue to get educated about what do I need to do or clean up for my daughters? What do I need to continue to teach them related to endocrine disruption? How can I help them make simplified changes now and learn as they grow older so then they are equipped with the knowledge? We are in a society where we can learn, and once we know better, we can do better. And that's really what we're trying to do inside this free community. So I wanted to just kind of share my heart today around where my head's at. After my conversation last week, it kind of got me in this reflective place of thinking about what are the things that we've done inside our own family to really help my son with his genetic disorder. But what have I also really started to get educated about as a mom who cares deeply about health, who cares deeply about the health of her family, and who wants to continue to create small change. And that's been this topic of also learning how to clean up our environment and understand that this absolutely plays a massive role in how we feel from the inside out, from a mental health standpoint, from a physical health standpoint, from an emotional health standpoint, and so much more. So in the show notes of this podcast, there are going to be 2 incredible resources for you that I would love for you to dive into and get access to. The first is our free community group with our team that I would love for you to join. It's a non-toxic living group where we're going to just dive into the learning and talk about all of the things that we are learning and growing through together. So please join that. You can go to the show notes. The link is right there to join in. And then the second is a recording from a video that we did, or I should say a call our team did this week, focused on really educating families, women, everyone about this idea of endocrine disruption on a deeper level and how cleaner products and certain ingredients compare to some of the big box places like the Sephoras and the Ultas and the Bath and Body Works. Those places have a lot of chemicals inside of their products. It's just the reality. And I know that, again, that's something that's hard to continue to kind of decipher through and figure out what makes the most sense for you and your family. But that is a big thing to start to understand, especially for young girls. And teens specifically are starting to dive into skincare routines and so much more at a much younger age. And what we're not paying enough attention to is how much this can really start to wreak havoc on their health, cause endocrine disrupting issues, hormonal imbalances and all kinds of things. And so for me, because I have a daughter who's 13, this is something I'm diving into more and more and more because I want to make sure that I'm supporting her hormone health from all of the areas of wellness, fitness, nutrition, lifestyle, sleep, stress. I want to teach her these very important foundationals to her health as she grows older so she can carry that throughout her life. And part of that is also environment. So please join us. I would love for you to do the learning with us. In the show notes of this podcast is the recording from the call we did, where you can learn more about cleaner living options and ingredients to pay attention to and better recommendations, in addition to understanding some of the things that are important to be aware of when it comes to things like endocrine disruption. And then the second is join our free community group. We would love to have you there. We're going to be, again, hosting all kinds of opportunities to learn more, to get educated, to also be a part of promotional opportunities with Black Friday sales, etc. We're going to be sharing our favorite products, brands we trust, and so many other things. And I would love to have you in there to do the learning with us because I know that this is one of those topics that's incredibly overwhelming and it's hard to do the learning on your own. And we're not meant to do any of this alone. As I always say on this podcast, as I ask all of the guests that come on here, why does it matter to share our stories? Why does it matter to talk through what's working for us? Why does it matter to share what we're learning? It matters so we know that we're not the only ones. It matters so we know that we can do this growth together, that we can do the unlearning together, that we can get educated together, we can make changes together, and it's better together. It feels less lonely and it feels less isolating. And the imperfect journey of trying to learn and grow together is meant to be done together because it just feels better that way. So I hope you join us. Again, go to the show notes. If you have questions, feel free to reach out anytime. Thanks again for being here today.